Okay. So, stranger, and there may be a third reappearance of him, for he may have settled down in a city, and may fabricate as well as buy these same wares, intending to live by selling them, and he would still be called a sophist. Theaetetus, certainly, stranger, then that's part of the acquisitive art which exchanges and of exchange, which either sells a man's own productions or retails those of others, as the case may be, and in either way sells the knowledge of virtue, you would again term sophistry. The thesis I must, if I am to keep pace with the argument, stranger, let us consider once more whether there may not be yet another aspect of sophistry. Theaetetus, what is it, stranger? In the acquisitive, there was a subdivision of the combative or fighting art. Theaetetus, there was, stranger, perhaps we had better divide it. Theaetetus, what shall be the divisions, stranger? There shall be one division of the competitive and another of the pugnacious. Theaetetus, very good, stranger. That part of the pugnacious, which is a contest of bodily strength, may be properly called by some such name as violent. Theaetetus, true, stranger. And when the war is one of words, it may be termed controversy. Theaetetus, yes, stranger, and controversy may be of two kinds. Theaetetus, what are they? Stranger, when long speeches are answered by long speeches, and there is public discussion about the just and unjust, that is forensic controversy. Theaetetus, yes, stranger, and there is a private sort of controversy which is cut up into questions and answers, and this is commonly called disputation. Theaetetus, yes, that is the name. Stranger, and of disputation, that sort which is only a discussion about contracts and is carried on at random and without rules of art, is recognized by the reasoning faculty to be a distinct class, but has hitherto had no distinctive name and does not deserve to receive one from us. Theaetetus, no, for the different sorts of it are too minute and heterogeneous, stranger, but that which proceeds by rules of art to disputes about justice and injustice in their own nature and about things in general, we have been accustomed to call argumentation. Theaetetus, certainly, stranger, and of argumentation sort wastes money and the other makes money. Theaetetus, very true. Stranger, suppose we try and give to each of these two classes a name. Theaetetus, let us do so. Stranger, I should say that the habit which leads a man to neglect his own affairs for the pleasure of a conversation, of which the style is far from being agreeable to the majority of his hearers, may be fairly termed loquacity. Such is my opinion. Theaetetus, that is the common name for it, stranger. But now who the other is, who makes money out of private disputation, it is your turn to say. Theaetetus, there is only one true answer. He is the wonderful sophist of whom we are in pursuit and who appears again for the fourth time. Stranger, yes, and with a fresh pedigree, for he is the money-making species of the heuristic, disputatious, controversial, pugnacious, combative, acquisitive family, as the argument has already proven. Theaetetus, certainly, stranger. How true was the observation that he was a many-sided animal and not to be caught with one hand, as they say. Theaetetus, then you must catch him with two. Stranger, yes, we must, if we can, and therefore let us try another track in our pursuit of him. You are aware that there are certain menial occupations which have names among servants. Jesus, yes, there are many such. Which of them do you mean, stranger? I mean such as sifting, straining, winnowing, thrashing. Jesus, certainly, stranger. And besides these, there are a great many more, such as carding, spinning, adjusting the warp and the woof. Thousands of similar expressions are used in the arts. The thesis of what are they to be patterns, and what are we going to do with them all? Stranger, I think that in all of these there is implied a notion of division. The thesis, yes. Stranger, then if, as I was saying, there is one art which includes all of them, ought not that art to have one name? The thesis, and what is the name of that of the arts? Stranger, the art of discerning or discriminating. The thesis, very good. Stranger, think whether you cannot divide this. The thesis, I should have to think a long while. Stranger, in all the previously named processes, either like has been separated from like, or the better from the worse. The thesis, I see now what you mean, stranger. There is no name for the first kind of separation. Of the second, which throws away the worse and preserves the better, I know a name. The thesis, what is it, stranger? Every discernment or discrimination of that kind, as I have observed, is called a purification. Yeah, so I want to go back up to where the stranger was talking about the different divisions of disputation, and he says one is about well, they're both basically discussions, and one is about contracts and it's carried on at random without rules of art. And then the other is has rules of arts and is about justice and injustice. And it's saying the discussion about justice and injustice is called argumentation, but then this one that's about contracts and has no rules and is carried on at random, has no distinct name. The thesis, he also says, yes, are many names for the class, I suppose, that doesn't have a name. Yeah, the class that doesn't have a name, and I'm wondering if he's talking about just like public public intercourse where you're just walking around and just talking to other people and there's no real well, I mean, each individual has their own kind of plan of where they're going and who they may see, or when they do see other individuals, what they're gonna say to them, or what they're gonna do. Whether they're planning on going to buy something, which I don't know if that's what the strangers included as a contract. But I mean, that would be for somebody who's selling things, a merchant. I mean, unless they have some kind of plan, they schedule something with some other with a customer, they wouldn't know who's gonna show up to purchase things, and not only purchase things, but certain persons who could show up and have questions, either of products or of the individual in the store. And I mean, of course, each interaction seems a little bit random when you're out in public. And I mean, there's, but I mean, that's the thing. He says there's no rules. I mean, I guess there's no rules in as far as I mean, there's rules in as far as there's the laws that everybody has to follow, but maybe it doesn't mean, maybe it means there's no rules in as far as words that need to be said, or I don't know, different I don't even know what you would call them. It is, I mean, it kind of seems like I mean, yeah, you could call them rules, but when you're having a arguments, I mean, I guess you could say you're following the rules of reason, or I mean, if you're like in a court, you're following the rules of the law in the court, and you know, or if you're, let's say you're doing like a research, in some kind of for some kind of science department of some kind, or some sort. There's rules you have to follow. Well, if you're doing like a paper, or if you're having a debates on science, yeah, there's rules that kind of context would set up. But I guess there's no rules in as far as well, I mean, the rules would be social rules, but those aren't really explicitly put down. The rules of different interactions with different individuals in different places. Um, the other thing was the strangers. The conclusion they came to, and as far as what a sophist is, which is heuristic, disputatious, controversial, pugnacious, competitive, acquisitive. And I mean, it's interesting because this dialogue is set up from what it would seem thus far to be against the sophists, and as far as the sophists, how sophistry, or the sophist. I mean, he doesn't really talk about sophistry per se. It doesn't seem like he talks about more of the sophist as always as an individual, or persons, but they're always put somewhat in a negative light. And I mean, when you think about Socrates, and the way that his other the way he was maneuvering, and the things he was doing during his time in his part of the land, he could basically be accused of all these different qualities, of having all these different characteristics. And I mean, it's interesting that he's placing it on the sophists, when I mean, many individuals probably would place these kind of characteristics on Socrates himself, even though this dialogue isn't between Socrates and another individual. It's between Theseus and the stranger. So yeah, let's continue. Theseus, yes, that is the usual expression, stranger, and anyone may see that purification is of two kinds. Theseus, perhaps so, if he were allowed time to think, but I do not see at this moment. Stranger, there are many purifications of bodies which may with propriety be comprehended under a single name. Theseus, what are they, And what is their name? Stranger, there is the purification of living bodies in their inward and in their outward parts, of which the former is duly effected by medicine and gymnastics, the latter by the not very dignified art of the bathman. And there is the purification of inanimate substances. To this, the arts of fulling and of furbishing in general attend in a number of minute particulars, having a variety of names which are thought ridiculous. The thesis very true, stranger. There can be no doubt that they are thought ridiculous, the thesis, but then the dialectical arts never considers whether the benefit to be derived from the purge is greater or less than that to be derived from the sponge, and has not more interest in the one than in the other. Her endeavor is to know what is and is not kindred in all arts, with a view to the acquisition of intelligence, and having this in view, she honors them all alike. And when she makes comparisons, she counts one of them not a whit more ridiculous than another, nor does she esteem him who adduces as his example of hunting the general's art at all more decorous than another who cites that of the vermin destroyer, but only as the greater pretender of the two. And as to your question concerning the name which was to comprehend all these arts of purification, whether of inanimate or whether of animate or inanimate bodies, the art of dialectic is in no wise particular about fine words. If she may be only allowed to have a general name for all other purifications, binding them up together and separating them off from the purification of the soul or intellect, for this is the purification at which she wants to arrive, and this we should understand to be her aim. Thesis, yes, I understand, and I agree that there are two sorts of purification, and that one of them is concerned with the soul, and that there is another which is concerned with the body. Stranger, excellent. And now listen to what I'm going to say, and try to divide further the first of the two. Thesis, whatever line of division you suggest, I will endeavor to assist you. Stranger, do we admit that virtue is distinct from vice in the soul? Thesis, certainly, stranger. And purification was to leave the good and to cast out whatever is bad. Thesis, true, stranger. Then any taking away of evil from the soul may be properly called purification. The thesis, yes, stranger. And in the soul there are two kinds of evil. The thesis, what are they? Stranger, the one may be compared to disease in the body, the other to deformity. Thesis, I do not understand. Stranger, perhaps you have never reflected that disease and discord are the same. Thesis, to this again I know not what I should reply. Stranger, do you not conceive discord to be a dissolution of kindred elements originating in some disagreement? Thesis, just that. Stranger, and is deformity anything but the want of measure, which is always unsightly? Thesis, exactly. Stranger, and do we not see that opinion is opposed to desire, pleasure to anger, reason to pain, and that all these elements are opposed to one another in the souls of bad men? Thesis, certainly. Stranger, and yet they must all be akin. Thesis, of course. Stranger, then we shall be right in calling vice a discord and disease of the soul. Thesis, most true. Stranger, and when things having motion and aiming at an appointed mark continually miss their aim and glance aside, shall we say that this is the effect of symmetry among them, or of want of symmetry? Thetis is clearly of the want of symmetry. Stranger, but surely we know that no soul is voluntarily ignorant of anything. Thetis is certainly not. Stranger, and what is ignorance but the aberration of a mind which is bent on truth, and in which the process of understanding is perverted? Thetis is true. Then, stranger, then we are to regard an unintelligent soul as deformed and devoid of symmetry. Thetis is very true. Stranger, then there are these two kinds of evil in the soul: the one which is generally called vice, and is obviously a disease of the soul. Thetis, yes, stranger, and there is the other, which they call ignorance, and which, because existing only in the soul, they will not allow to be vice. Thetis, I certainly admit what I at first disputed, that there are two kinds of vice in the soul, and that we ought to consider cowardice, intemperance, and injustice to be alike forms of disease in the soul, and ignorance, of which there are all sorts of varieties, to be deformities. To be stranger, and in the case of the body, are there not two arts which have to do with the two bodily states? Thetis, what are they? Stranger, there is gymnastic, which has to do with deformity, and medicine, which has to do with disease. Thetis is true. Stranger, and where there is insolence and injustice and cowardice, is not chastisement the art which is most required? Thetis, that certainly appears to be the opinion of mankind. Stranger, again, of the various kinds of ignorance, may not instruction be rightly said to be the remedy? Thetis is true. Stranger, and of the art of instruction, shall we say that there is one or many kinds? At any rate, there are two principal ones. Think. Thetis, I will. Stranger, I believe that I can see how we shall soonest arrive at the answer to this question. Thetis, how? Stranger, if we can discover a line which divides ignorance into two halves. For a division of ignorance into two parts will certainly imply that the art of instruction is also twofold, answering to the two divisions of ignorance. Thetis, well, and do you see what you are looking for? Stranger, I do seem to myself to see one very large and bad sort of ignorance, which is quite separate and may be weighted in scale against all other sorts of ignorance put together. Thetis, what is it? Stranger, when a person supposes that he knows and does not know, this appears to be the great source of all the errors of intellect. Thetis is true, and if I am not mistaken, is the kind of ignorance which specially earns the title of stupidity. Thetis is true. Stranger, what name then shall be given to the sort of instruction which gets rid of this? Thetis, the instruction which you mean, stranger, is, I should imagine, not the teaching of handicraft arts, but what, thanks to us, has been termed education in this part of the world. Stranger, yes. Thetis, and by nearly all Hellenes. But we have still to consider whether education admits of any further division. Thetis, we have. Stranger, I think that there is a point at which such a division is possible. Thetis, where? Stranger, of education one method appears to be rougher and another smoother. Thetis, how are we to distinguish the two? Stranger, there is the time-honored mode which our fathers commonly practice towards their sons, and which is still adopted by many, either of roughly reproving them their errors or of gently advising them, which varieties may be correctly included under the general term of admonition. Thetis is true, stranger, but whereas some appear to have arrived at the conclusion that all ignorance is involuntary, and that no one who thinks himself wise is willing to learn any of those things which he is conscious of his own cleverness, and that the admoni- admonitory sort of instruction gives much trouble and does little good. Thetis, they are quite right, stranger. Accordingly, they set to work to eradicate the spirit of conceit in another way. Thetis, in what way? Stranger, they cross-examine a man's words when he thinks that he is saying something and is really saying nothing, and easily convict him of inconsistencies in his opinions. These they then collect by the dialectical process, and placing them side by side, show that they contradict one another about the same things in relation to the same things, and in the same respect. He, seeing this, is angry with himself and grows gentle towards others, and thus is entirely delivered from great prejudices and harsh notions in a way which is most amusing to the hearer, and produces the most lasting good effect on the person who is the subject of the operation. For as the physician considers that the body will receive no benefit from taking food until the internal obstacles have been removed, so the purifier of the soul is conscious that his patient will receive no benefit from the application of knowledge until he is refuted, and from refutation learns modesty. He must be purged of his prejudices first, and made to think that he knows only what he knows and no more. Okay, so the stranger is saying the sophist is I guess the goal of the sophist, or the claimed goal of the sophist, is to purify the soul, which is defective, has vices to get classes of vices that the stranger says is a deformity of the soul and the disease of the soul. The disease of the soul seeming to be moral defects, whereas the deformity of the soul is intellectual defects. And yeah, so stranger says the sophist, well, I mean, he's making the arguments that the sophist is, well, yeah, he's gonna make the argument perhaps that the sophist is gonna purify the soul, try to fix the person, to make them virtuous or make them intelligent. I mean, it seems the sophist may focus on the intelligence aspect of the individual, trying to make the person smart, or make the person believe that the sophist is smart, so that the sophist could get paid. Um, this and then the issue with that would be that for any individual to really know that the sophist is tricking people, assuming that's what the sophist is doing, like any individual that they trick would have to be smart enough to, or intelligent enough to realize that they're being tricked. And I mean, that's the kind of the crux of the whole issue is, I mean, if you're not really, if you don't have the knowledge to see that you're being tricked, and the trick in a sense is education. it's a really difficult a difficult thing to a difficult problem to kind of overcome, considering uh, your relationship to that individual. You would really have to get some outside help, or somehow through the process of being tricked, be able to realize the trick. And I mean, once you realize the trick, it's I mean, depending on the trick itself, you could is the sophist educating you if you learn something you did not know before? I mean, obviously being tricked is bad, so it kind of seems as if I mean that obviously that wouldn't be the kind of the points, depending on the trick. If it's a trick that has applications beyond the what the sophist probably believes that they're doing, because maybe the sophist believes they're just giving information that seems useless, well, seems useful, but to the sophist doesn't know the full potential of the information, so it comes across as, to the sophist, as useless. And once the individual realize, oh, this person is a sophist, they don't know what they're talking about, I'm not going to pay them for it. I mean, it would be after the fact of learning information. And I mean, if if it's new information, it's like, well, you got something you didn't have before. And if you realize maybe down the line that it was really quite useful, I mean, it's the sophists, that they do their job, or they consider not doing their job, because the knowledge they had, they didn't really know all the ins and outs of it. And I mean, this kind of leads into the notion of having moral deformities, which more specifically, for the thesis and stranger, would be cowardice, intemperance, and injustice. And it's just that these it, he's setting it up, and as if these are kind of innate to individuals, these characteristics or these virtues, well, these vices, which, I mean, obviously the virtues would be the courage, temperance, and justice. But for any individual to have these attributes, or to be aware of these morals, it would have to it would seem it would have to be knowledge. It would have to be information that the person is aware of in one sense, and then in another sense, morals or doing the right thing, being sympathetic, could be very could be innate in the sense of how animals are able to interact in a fair way that seems more biological than kind of created or manufactured in a more rational way, or reasonable way, in the way humans would do it. Would try to seek fairness. But in the dialogue, it's set up that these morals are, well, not the morals, that intelligence or ignorance is a vice. So it's not necessarily something that's separate from morals. And as far as being, as far as discovering information and seeking out knowledge for the sake of curiosity, or for the sake of just having more data about the world, so you know more about it, it's set up as if it's it's bad or immoral not to have knowledge, not to know. And this is curious in two ways. In that, in one way, everybody's always going to be a little bit, a, a lot ignorant about a lot of things, because nobody could be fully aware of everything that's going on in the world all the time. Humans are fallible. We're going to make errors. Even, if you're omniscience, you still have like the problem of, of knowing what's going to happen in the future. I mean, how would you even know that what you know is what you actually know, and not just a fabrication of your mind? And it's just, that's just one issue. And then the other issue is, we consider people who don't know certain things to be innocent, to not really be found guilty of certain transgressions that could come from ignorance. And that, I mean, sometimes, of course, not all the time in certain situations, but just that mere fact would put ignorance not as something that's purely bad, or as something that's strictly given to evil, or strictly bonded or related to immorality. So yeah, we'll see what how the stranger progresses with the arguments.